Jesus is Lord. And he was such a nice Jewish boy. Jesus changed my life. And he's still in the life-changing business.
As Paul said, the love of Christ compels me.
You know, Randy, I think most people don't realize how much darkness there is in the world.
It can't be just coming to church and getting pumped up with the faith. You and I are all going to have something of faith in us.
Jesus died to save sinners, and you are a sinner.
The following program was filmed live at Abundant Life Assembly of God in Grand Prairie, Texas, at their monthly CrossTalk service.
Apologize to any of you who saw my Facebook post teasing the meeting tonight. Teaser for tonight's message. What happens to a bad federal government? Don't miss it. I think it's a serious issue, and I don't think it's something that just affects us today in America. What does happen to a bad federal government? To answer that question, because tonight's message is about bad federal governments, I want to go way back and ask the question, why did Israel go into captivity? I was surprised to see some of my high school friends commenting on the Facebook post for this message. One of them said, "I sure wished I lived down that way." He's from Gary, Indiana, where I'm from. Another one wrote, "And who did you vote for as president in charge of our government? Bad is too mild a term." One of my high school friends. And I responded, I said, this message is not about an election or a specific administration. Rather, it is a comparison of two failed federal governments from antiquity, as well as an overarching failure crossing modern federal governments. The crisis we face is not limited to an individual. It is a heart disease that transcends politics and suggests a terminal condition unless we as a people turn from our current trajectory. Our trajectory is dangerous, and we can look back to see what happens. So, I'll start by asking 5 questions, which I will answer. One is, when did Israel go into captivity? A lot of people don't realize that it happened over a period of some years. I'll say approximately 730 years before Christ, and it was in some stages. So there you'll find different dates for when the Assyrian captivity began for Israel. Israel was taken into captivity, and it was a tragic event. The second question is, why did Israel go into captivity? And since that is the subject of this message, we'll get to it, but I want to ask a couple of other questions that are easier to answer. Number 3, when did Israel secede from its union with Judah? You know, we think of America and we look at our American Civil War era, and the South seceded from the Union. That's sort of the way things are viewed. Well, in approximately 930 years before Christ, probably 932 or 931, thereabouts, we'll just say 930 years before Christ, there was a secession, there was a leaving. The Union was sort of violently disbanded, and it could have been much more violent. God intervened and showed his people to not do what we did in our country, which was brothers to kill brothers during the American Civil War. But again, approximately 930 years before Christ, this event occurred. So the fourth question is, why did the 10 tribes secede from the Union? Because that's essentially what happened. And the answer is, it was a bad federal government over the 12 tribes. And then the last question that I hope to address is, can there be any comparisons made between ancient Israel and modern America? And I think there are some valid comparisons and perhaps some invalid comparisons also, but they're pretty good for effect, you know?
Here in India, we've been doing a project called Business for Missions. Business for Missions is a program that it marries the work of Today with God and a business element that we call micro businesses, where we take students from the School of Business and have them use their business education and their business minds to put into practice things that would work in a different culture to improve the lives of people in ministry.
I expected to learn how to start up businesses. I knew I'd learned it in classes, but really taking that information and applying it would be a whole nother story, especially in a whole different culture and country.
I was looking for more experience to put on my resume and also just to learn more about business. I felt like this could be a great opportunity for me just to learn about international studies and more about how they do things over in other cultures.
When we bring business for missions, we do benefit by that, and that I have experienced.
The students that came for the first year of Business for Missions came to evaluate and research the area, and now year 2 students, we're here to actually implement the idea and the plan that we have.
And I believe that this team will really help some of our believers in starting some businesses so that they can help themselves as well as the community around.
Right now we're helping to start a goat farm here in Coimbatore.
We got to consult with the business owners, showing them how to take care of the goats, and we gave them projections on the potential profit they could make in the next 3 years.
I expect the team next year will go to Coimbatore and find that the business is on track and that the people taking care of it are doing their responsibilities and taking care of what they needed to.
On the ministry side, while we were in Coimbatore, we were able to minister in the church that we were helping.
Saga University students gave the goat farm for develop ourselves. We can sustain ourselves. We can help in this goat farm. We can earn more money to spend our ministry in a good way.
With the Today with God project, we were able to share with the pastors that came for the conference. We split up into groups and we were able to go through the program with them.
When we use Today with God, we are teaching our students how to also use the business aspect to minister in different groups. It's not a point about just being in business and saying we give and fund money.
Today with God is very beneficial for everyone in the Indian community, just because it's an easy way to minister to them.
I think the bigger return is when you're able to work hard and you deliver and you give something back to that community that they can use when you're gone.
So these stories and videos and movies are great help for us to reach the people. In an easy and better way, we can reach the people. We can present the gospel of Jesus, the love of Christ.
The micro business that we decided to create here on the Andaman Islands is the beauty parlor.
After hearing about the tsunami and just being able to speak to the people that are from here, it kind of broke my heart.
They lost their homes, they lost their loved ones.
I've had the opportunity to learn a lot of things that I would never be able to in the textbook.
I thank for SAGU and its students, its professor, to all all of them.
Even being a student at Southwestern now, we're already making an impact in the world and in business.
I like Business for Missions because it's a very educational program.
It is something that you can experience in the classroom. It is something that you need to go out and do. This will prepare you better for your future because you know what it's actually like to be a part of something that is going on bigger than yourself.
It's a good opportunity to learn and to change what you know and to change what you think about people in the world.
It has impacted me both spiritually and on the business side of things.
It's been a rewarding experience for me and something I would encourage others to be able to do to get the same type of enjoyment.
It is an opportunity of a lifetime to go out and live what God has for you.
It's a wonderful project. It is very useful and fruitful in the gospel ministry of Jesus Christ to share the love of Christ among the people of India.
So going back to the second question, which is the topic of this message, why did Israel go into captivity? As I said, it was approximately 730 years before Christ, under Hoshea, the last king of Israel. This is when the federal government that was overseeing the 10 tribes quit paying the army that provided its protection. You know, one of the primary purposes of a federal government is to protect the citizens. And in about 730 BC, the last king of Israel made an enormous mistake. Not only did he quit paying for the protection that he was supposed to be paying, he also attempted to enter into what would be considered an illegal alliance with another foreign power. He tried to ally with King So of Egypt. He was just a so-so king. But realistically, instead of turning to God, which would have been the wise answer, and history would have had a very different outcome, he quit paying his protector, and he tried to make a deal with another enemy, basically, and the result was devastating. The defense quickly went on the offense. And I will read you how that went in 2 Kings chapter 17, just a few verses. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up to attack Hoshea, who had been Shalmaneser's vassal and had paid him tribute. But the king of Assyria discovered that Hoshea was a traitor, for he had sent envoys to So, king of Egypt, and he no longer paid tribute to the king of Assyria as he had done year by year. Therefore, Shalmaneser seized him and put him in prison. The king of Assyria invaded the entire land, marched against Samaria, and laid siege to it for 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria and deported the Israelites to Assyria. It was a bad decision by a king who was in charge of a federal government, essentially, overseeing these 10 tribes. And when you hear the term, the 10 lost tribes of Israel, these are who are being referred to in this text and in the information I'm presenting to you. Now, an argument can be made that and I intend to make this argument, the so-called 10 lost tribes of Israel were lost pretty much exclusively due to the failure of a bad federal government. That's what happens when you have a bad federal government. Bad fiscal policy and failed foreign policy brought the destruction of Israel and the subsequent Assyrian invasion and Assyrian exile. So what does that mean? And how does that play out in our world? Well, I would simply say that bad choices at the top are felt top to bottom. So we should think about those things when we make our decisions as to who we want to lead us in whatever the capacity of leadership. Bad decisions, bad choices at the top are felt top to bottom.
Did you know that leprosy still exists? That's why a few years ago, we worked with World Missionary Evangelism to create a leper clinic here in India where we provide the medicines and food and the gospel on a daily basis. One thing we found was that the children of leper patients were contracting the disease as well because they get the disease through regular daily contact over long periods of time. So we worked with WME to create a children's home where the children of these leper patients could live nearby their family, but give them a hope and a future free of the disease. Would you consider sponsoring one of these children? Would you consider helping to give them a hope and a future? For just $25 a month, you can give that hope. You can provide that future. Less than $1 a day. Give us a call at 1-800-688-3422. Check out the all-new IBN television. Follow the Move by tuning in as we partner with ministries like Greg Laurie and Harvest America, serving our audience 24 hours a day. IBN broadcasts on 52 television stations around the country and on popular streaming apps like Roku, Apple TV, Android, and many others, with one purpose: to share the move of our living God with the dying world on a daily basis. IBN Television.
So now we know the end of the story. Bad federal government led to an exile of the 10 tribes and hence the 10 lost tribes. But what of the beginning? Well, the beginning of this story goes back to approximately 930 years before Christ. So let's say 200 years earlier, when you're dealing with a calendar of BC or BCE, before the Common Era, depending on how you want to view the abbreviations. The numbers start high and get lower until they get all the way down to after the death of Christ. And they have a different abbreviation and a different meaning for it, but that's what it comes down to. That's how is the easier way to view it. Starts high, gets low, and then it starts back over and gets high. So approximately 200 years before this exile, there was another bad federal government. And what occurred was, instead of a much-needed tax cut, a bad federal government raised taxes beyond what the people could bear. And it really is about that simple. And we get all spiritual about these things, and as well we should. But in context, it was a bad federal government over 12 tribes implementing bad fiscal policy that led to what King Rehoboam did. And I want to read that to you. And that's found in 1 Kings chapter 12. I'll read you from verse 4. Rehoboam was the son of King Solomon, okay? your father, referring to Solomon, put a heavy yoke on us. This is now a representative of the 10 tribes speaking to Rehoboam, who's in charge of 12 tribes. Your father put a heavy yoke on us, but now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke he put on us, and we will serve you. There's an appeal being made here. Cut the taxes. Give us a break. We're having a hard time. Rehoboam answered, go away for 3 days and then come back to me. So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam consulted the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. And he asks them, how would you advise me to answer these people, he asked. He got counsel from his father's advisors. They replied, if today you will be a servant to these people and serve them and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants. But Rehoboam rejected the advice the elders gave him and consulted the young men who had grown up with him and were serving him. He asked them, what is your advice? How should we answer these people who say to me, lighten the yoke your father put on us? The young men who had grown up with him replied, tell these people who have said to you, your father put a heavy yoke on us, but make our yoke lighter. Tell them, my little finger is thicker than my father's waist. My father laid on you a heavy yoke. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions. Be careful who you get advice from. And we should pray that our leaders get advice from wise men and women, because the counsel that our leaders receive will often affect their decisions, and their decisions will affect us. And when bad choices are made, they're felt at the top and from the top to the bottom. 3 days later, Jeroboam, who was the representative of these men and women from the northern group of tribes, Jeroboam and all the people returned to Rehoboam as the king had said, come back to me in 3 days. The king answered the people harshly, rejecting the advice given him by the elders. He followed the advice of the young men and said, my father made your yoke heavy. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions. So the king did not listen to the people, for this turn of events was from the Lord. I think the Lord was well aware of the direction this was going to go, and he had a plan, but that plan proved to be very painful for a lot of people. And this plan was to fulfill the word the Lord had spoken to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through Ahijah the Shilonite. When all Israel saw that the king refused to listen to them, they answered the king. What share do we have in David? David was Rehoboam's grandfather. David was king from the tribe of Judah. What part in Jesse's son? To your tents, O Israel, look after your own house, O David. These words are very, very sad. They're quite telling. The representative who became King Jeroboam, king of the 10 northern tribes, king of Israel, as compared to king of Judah, King Jeroboam was correctly representing the interests of the 10 northern tribes. And their concerns, their pain, their circumstances were just simply ignored completely. And in fact, it was an insulting response. And the result was King Jeroboam said, we have nothing here. There's nothing for us to talk about. You attend to your own house. And that's what happened. So what we have is a failure of the federal government in approximately 930 BC. It caused the northern 10 tribes to secede from the union of the 12 tribes of Israel, Israel being a man named Jacob, Yaakov, Yisrael. It was a man, not a place. It was a man who had 12 sons. The 12 sons became 12 tribes. Judah, one of his sons, messianic implications, prophetic realities. From the tribe of Judah, Messiah comes. King David comes from this tribe of Judah, his son, King Solomon, and now King Rehoboam. So what happens? The north kept the name Israel. The southern kingdom of Judah kept Jerusalem, the capital. Now, I believe that this failure rests squarely on the shoulders of foolish King Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. He responded to bad advice. He could have unified the people by offering a tax cut, but instead he came out with a failed show of force and said, you had it easy before. It's going to get tougher on you, so just get used to it. And you know what? Sometimes people just don't accept that kind of rhetoric. Sometimes people say, no, I've had enough. The northern tribes had enough. The taxes were too burdensome. There was no real sense of representation. It was sort of like a distant government making demands on the far reaches of the nation without really representing the people. And that was a failure. And that failure led to really tragic results.